We're back for our college basketball best bets here on Saturday, March 22nd. We are down to 32. That means we have 8 games today in the NCAA tournament. There are some NIT games, but I'm not going to touch them today. We've got 5 best bets through 5, obviously, NCAA tournament games. We're going to get to that in a minute, folks. But before we get into the best bets, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more daily college basketball best bets here on the channel. Yesterday, a 3-2 day. Looking to improve on that today, obviously, as we advance through the tournament. Make sure to join us in a couple hours for our NBA predictions. Like, obviously, with college basketball, we're going to have 5 predictions for you today with the NBA, be it only 5 games in the association. So, again, join us for that in a couple hours here on the channel. And also, make sure to go check out our full bracket breakdown. Now, obviously, we're in the round of 32 now, but my entire Final Four is still intact. No, the Final Four is not what you see on the screen with UC San Diego, Norfolk State, Purdue, and Duke, but my actual Final Four is completely still intact. I think our Elite 8 is still good too. So watch that video and see how we're doing. Anyways, also UFC London is happening in a couple hours, so make sure to go check us out with that video. Link down below on Greedo Plays MMA. Subscribe to that channel, subscribe to this channel. We start things off with McNeese and Purdue, and I think the McNeese run ends right now. I'm taking the Purdue Boilermakers to get rid of them. First game in Providence, Rhode Island, obviously. I'm taking Purdue to get rid of McNeese. This is exactly what we predicted to happen in our bracket. We had McNeese to beat Clemson, and we had Purdue to beat High Point, and I do think Clemson gets rid of the Cowboys here. Now, I think McNeese played a really good basketball game against Clemson. I thought, again, it was great. You know, they beat the Tigers. They shut them down defensively in the first half. They ended up winning the game by 2 points. Now, again, Clemson scored 13 points in the first half, which you have to give a lot of credit to McNeese defensively in that basketball game. But at the same time, Clemson could not make a shot to save their lives in that first half. And the second half, Clemson, sure, they were down the entire half and never eventually took the lead. They scored 54 points on McNeese in the second. I just don't think, again, I think McNeese, yes, they're a good team. They played really well defensively in the first half, and they're a solid offensive team too. I just don't think that's going to be able to cut it against a better team in Purdue. Say what you want about Purdue basketball this season. It wasn't great, obviously, the first post-Edey season for the Boilermakers. They are 23-11 in the regular season, but the victory over High Point, again, winning that game by 12 points, I just think Purdue's on a higher level than Clemson. I always thought Clemson was kind of fraudulent. Now, I do say a lot of teams are fraudulent, so again, it is what it is, but I think Purdue's a much tougher opponent for McNeese than what Clemson was. You know, you look at how Clemson played again, they were ice cold from the field in the first half. They could not get going. Chase Hunter didn't have a bad second half, but the first half he was really bad. Ian Shefflin got into foul trouble early and really wasn't able to stay in the game and really play all that physically. It just, everything got off to the worst possible start for Clemson in that basketball game. As long as Purdue doesn't fall behind early, I think they'll control this one throughout, if I'm being honest. Sure, again, I like what's happening with McNeese. I like the run that they're on. I just think it comes to an end here. Purdue's just the better basketball team. Now, when we look forward in the tournament, obviously, right, the winner of this game will take on the winner of Houston and Gonzaga. We're actually going to talk about that later in the video. I don't think the winner of this game advances at all in the tournament, regardless of if Houston or Gonzaga wins that eventual game. I think both those squads beat the winner of McNeese and Purdue. But in this spot, yes, I like the Boilermakers a lot. Again, McNeese played good defense in the Clemson game, but how much of that was the great defense McNeese was playing? Again, they were, but at the same time, man, Clemson just could not hit shots. McNeese scores 69 points. They shot 20% from the three-point line in that game. And I get it, that's not entirely what McNeese's offense is, but that will just not cut it against Purdue. Yes, they look good against Clemson, but at the same exact time, the Tigers just looked horrible. I don't think Purdue, puts up that bad of an offensive effort in this game. Obviously, again, things start with their 2 stars. We're looking at Trey Kaufman-Renn, a player who averaged 20 points a game this season, and Braden Smith. When Braden Smith is on, he looks like one of the best point guards in all of college basketball. The way he's able to play make, the way he's able to sink threes. Again, I'll never forget the UCLA game where Braden Smith was unstoppable in West Lafayette. Obviously, again, neutral site game in Providence, Rhode Island now. But when Braden Smith is on, he's elite. When Trey Kaufman-Renn is on, he is elite. I just don't think McNeese is able to hang with this squad. Purdue is the much better basketball team. We look at the spread. Purdue is a -5.5 point favorite in this game. McNeese has got guys, right? We're looking at, Javon Garcia, Sincere Parker, Christian Shoemate. There are players who can hoop for the McNeese Cowboys. They're just not on the level of Purdue. They're just not. I think Trey Kaufman-Renn has a day inside. I mean, it'll probably be either Charles or Shoemate on him tonight. I assume it's going to be Charles. Yeah, he's their bigger big compared to Shoemate. But, I mean, can Joe Charles hang with Trey Kaufman-Renn? And you know Braden Smith is going to create for his own shot. You know Fletcher Lawyer is also pretty lethal from beyond the arc as well. It's just a bad matchup, I think, for McNeese. And I don't think, again, Purdue is a team that's going to go all that far in the tournament. I obviously think they're losing in the next round. I just think matchup-wise, this is good for them against the McNeese Cowboys. I think McNeese got ultimately a little bit lucky about, obviously the way Clemson was missing shots in that game and their piss-poor effort in the first half. I think Purdue plays a much cleaner game. They don't turn the ball over as much as Clemson does. And Purdue's not going to miss the wide-open shots. Fletcher Lawyer's not missing wide-open shots. Braden Smith's not missing wide-open shots. CJ Cox, these guys are not going to miss the shots that are given to them. I'm taking Purdue. I just think they're on another level. Again, shout out to McNeese, got farther this year than they did last year, but I'm taking the Boilermakers to eliminate them and advance to the Sweet 16. We go on to our second game, and it is the second game being played in Providence, Rhode Island. We have the St. John's Red Storm taking on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Like the McNeese-Purdue game, exactly what we thought was going to happen with our tournament or with our bracket. Give me St. John's. Again, there are levels to this. St. John's got off to one of the worst starts you can get off to with the Omaha, Nebraska game. I mean, it was, really bad start. They were down 7-0, right, to start that basketball game. Obviously, again, the Red Storm ended up winning the game by 30 points, 83-53. They locked in offensively, started shooting a lot better, they started to drive to the hoop effectively, and obviously, again, the defense is always going to show up for the Red Storm. But this is an all-time coaching matchup, obviously. Rick Pitino from St. John's, John Calipari, obviously, for Arkansas. It's an elite matchup. I mean, regardless, we were going to get an elite matchup as long as St. John's won in the first round, and this is exactly what we get here. I'm not betting against Rick Pitino. I'm just not. So both Pitino and Calipari, and Pitino said this himself recently, they're the only two coaches in college basketball history to take 3 different teams to Final Fours. I still think Pitino is going to be the first to take 4 different teams to a Final Four because he's taking St. John's to a Final Four this season. I truly believe it. Again, if you watch our bracket breakdown, you know how highly I think of St. John's this season. They're the best defensive team in the country. Omaha, Nebraska, say what you want, they're a 15 seed, but St. John's shut them down in the second half, outscored them 50-25. That's not a bad offensive unit from Omaha, Nebraska. Yes, they're the Summit League champions, but that team can hoop, man. That Omaha team, they have players. Markel Sutton, one of the best players in the Summit League. J.J. White, a really good shooter in the Summit League as well. And that team was limited to 50 points. Now, obviously, it's a step up going from the Omaha, Nebraska Mavericks to the Arkansas Razorbacks. The defense that St. John's team plays, man, it's just, I don't know. Arkansas got by Kansas in their first game. Something we expected, obviously. I mean, we saw that one coming. That was one of the best bets for that day, obviously, on Thursday. A really good game in that one out of Jonas Adu. He had 18 points, I believe. Adu Thiero, obviously, is their big. He is going to show up. Boogie Fland came back, obviously, for that Arkansas-Kansas game, his first game in a couple months. Fland played only 24 minutes and scored 6 points, but in all fairness, like we talked about before that Jayhawks matchup, just the presence of Boogie Fland on the court makes Arkansas a better basketball team. And obviously, again, he didn't have the best output in that game, but John L. Davis was obviously a factor. DJ Wagner, Eve Visick, there are players in the Arkansas Razorbacks 100%. I just think St. John's is the much better basketball team. Sure, again, the Red Storm are not going to blow you away offensively. I mean, RJ Lewis obviously will lead the charge. He had 22 points in the Omaha game. We went 5 for 8 from beyond the arc, 8 for 14 from the field. Kadari Richmond as well, who's just the world's worst free throw shooter. It's weird. He shoots 30% from the line. 40, but still he's horrible. Anyways, he's a good basketball player, just can't shoot free throws. And obviously Zuby as well is an elite big, I think, for St. John's. I think he's going to continue to play well in this game. Now, Zuby might have a potential big matchup tonight. I don't know if Adu Thiero is playing or not. So Thiero hasn't played since the Mizzou game. Last I saw, he was questionable. Again, he has not played in a while. That was a big, talking point about Arkansas's season, obviously with Fland's injury and then the Thiero injury. I don't know if they're going to get him back tonight. If he does play, will he start? And obviously that's a matchup immediately with Zuby. I don't know. But regardless, we're taking St. John's here. I just don't think Arkansas is going to be able to score that effectively in this game. There's just levels, guys. Sure, the win over Kansas was great. We had it in the video, obviously. We thought they were going to beat the Jayhawks at plus 175, obviously. Shout out to us. But no. There's just levels to this, man. Kansas, They're not a great defensive team. They struggled shooting the entire game. And sure, again, St. John's will go through their spells as well, but I think they're going to be able to shut down Arkansas defensively. I really think so. Again, John L. Davis had a decent game. Jonas Adu had 22. DJ Wagner had 14. Trevion Brazil obviously was the big in that one. I don't know if Thiero is going to play or not. It'll probably be Brazil, obviously. I think St. John's shuts them down, man. I think Patino wins this, all-time coaching matchup here. I think the Johnnies are just the better squad. RJ Lewis again leading the charge offensively, and the defense this team plays, man, physical defense. They outpace you. They really pressure you. I'm taking St. John's here. I think this game's a blowout. I just don't think Arkansas is going to be able to score personally. Again, I think the Red Storm are on a one-way path straight to the Final Four. I believe it. Who's stopping this team? What, Texas Tech next round? Florida? Florida's great. I think Maryland's getting Florida. I'm just saying it. I think Maryland's going to get them in the Sweet 16, right? So I don't see St. John's losing. If you watch our bracket breakdown, you know how highly I think of this squad. I'm taking St. John's to shut down Arkansas defensively. Still with the injuries. Again, Flan's second game back. We don't know if Thiero's playing. Likely not. I just don't anticipate Arkansas having a good night against St. John's. I don't think they're going to be able to score. Give me the St. John's Red Storm. Again, as long as they're able just to find their shot and find effective ways to score, it should be no problem. St. John's heading to the Sweet 16 after a victory here against John Calipari and the number 10 seed, obviously, the Arkansas Razorbacks. We go on to our third best bet of the video, and we go to the game with the closest odds today on the slate. We go to the Ball Arena in Denver, Colorado. We have got the number 3 seed, the Wisconsin Badgers, taking on the number 6 seed in the BYU Cougars. Now, we picked against BYU in the last matchup, and now that one didn't go our way, right? I mean, I know you guys didn't really love the pick of VCU, and obviously it didn't hit for us on Thursday. We're taking Wisconsin here. Again, this is a matchup we didn't expect to happen, obviously, because we had Virginia Commonwealth. But ultimately, yes, originally I did have Wisconsin going to the Sweet 16, and that's exactly what I expect here. Highest scoring Wisconsin Badgers basketball team in over 40 seasons is what this team is this year. They are a great shooting team. They are going to put pressure on you, and they are going to continue to score. BYU is not a bad shooting squad as well. I just think there are levels. That's all this is. That's all this is. BYU looked good in the VCU game, man. They did. They hit some very opportune shots. They hit a lot of shots when they mattered, obviously. We're looking at Richie Saunders. We're looking at Igor Demin, who hit some big threes early in that basketball game to get BYU some distance away from VCU, obviously, right? I mean, BYU was up by 11 at half, and, the entire rest of the game, the Rams were just trying to chase Brigham Young, and that's just not the way that Max Shugla and VCU wants to play, obviously. A defensive-minded team, and if they fall behind early, they don't really have the potential to come back. That's the difference between VCU and Wisconsin. Okay, yeah, Wisconsin can fall behind, but they're going to fight their way back into the basketball game because they have the shooting to get themselves back in the game. They're not a defensive-minded team. They are going to try to put it on you. They're going to try to outscore you. So obviously, again, last couple games, it has been John Blackwell leading the charge in terms of scoring. Blackwell's a player who averages 16 points a game this season. John Tunge as well. Had a bad Big Ten championship game. It wasn't, his best game in the round of 64 against the Montana Grizzlies, obviously. Only scored 15 points. But again, Wisconsin didn't need the best effort. Tunge has been playing basketball since 2019 in college. This is his 6th season. Holy crap, that was his 5th. Anyways, experience, right? We're taking the experience out of Wisconsin. They're just the better shooting squad, obviously, right? I mean, we look at the team as a whole, right? They've got the shooters, and I don't think BYU can keep up. I don't think they can. Igor Demin, again, he'll hit his shots. Richie Saunders will hit his shots. Trevin Nell isn't a horrible basketball player either. Traore, obviously, they're big. The better basketball team is Wisconsin. I just think when you look at the style of this game, right, Wisconsin's going to be running. Obviously, they're going to take as many. I don't want to say as many quick shots as possible, but I just feel like they're going to be able to outshoot BYU this entire basketball game. And again, even if Wisconsin does fall behind, it's not like VCU who, sure, VCU did hit some threes in that game, and obviously they shoot a lot of threes, but they're a slow-paced team who needed to shoot a bunch of threes to get back in that basketball game. They ended up hitting 15, right? But the way and the pressure BYU put on them early in the basketball game was just so difficult for Virginia Commonwealth to get back into it. I don't think, again, if Wisconsin falls behind by 10, which hopefully, again, they don't, because obviously we're picking Wisconsin just to straight up win this basketball game, they have the potential of coming back from down 10 points. That's really something that VCU couldn't do. So I'm not really concerned with Wisconsin in this game. Obviously, again, this was an elite team in the Big Ten this season. They lost the Big Ten championship game to Michigan. Again, Blackwell's been their leading guy, and that's fine as long as this team's shooting can get hot. I really am not too concerned about them losing to BYU here. The odds are even, which kind of surprised me, or a slight favorite, obviously, are the Badgers. I guess the only reasoning to this is because the game is in Colorado, obviously a state over from Utah and Provo. Obviously, well, Provo's in the city in Utah, obviously, but Colorado, Utah, right there. So BYU will have somewhat of the advantage, being close to home. But I think the Badgers are just the better basketball team. I think our BYU hate watch is finally going to come to an end tonight because they're going to lose. I get it, on paper they're the third best team in the Big 12 this year, only behind Houston and Texas Tech. But I mean, ultimately, they robbed Arizona in that one game in Tucson, so I don't put too much into that. I think Wisconsin's able to pick up the victory here. They're the all-around, in my opinion, better scoring team. I wouldn't expect that much defense to be played tonight. Both these teams are high scoring. BYU gave up 92 points to Iowa State. Sure, they won that game, but just BYU's going to give up points. Wisconsin will give up points too. Wisconsin let Michigan score all over them in the Big Ten championship game. It was only 59 points, but it felt like it, obviously, in the big moments. Wisconsin was giving up a lot of opportunities to Michigan. I think Wisconsin's the all-around better basketball team. No need to repeat myself. I'm taking the Badgers to beat BYU. Minus 115 on the line. I like Wisconsin to get this one done. We go on to our fourth best bet of the video as we move to Gonzaga and Houston. So this is the 1-8 matchup in the Midwest region. Obviously, the winner of this game, we talked about it earlier, will take on the winner of the McNeese Cowboys and the Purdue Boilermakers. Obviously, again, we feel like that's going to be Purdue. But in this game, we like Houston. Now, this is kind of just, I've kind of taken a complete 180 today, considering the way we've been picking earlier in March Madness, right? I was picking a lot of underdogs, and sure, we did really well yesterday, obviously, cashing with the New Mexico dog pick. We cashed with a bunch of dogs in the first four, obviously. Hell, we went 3-2 yesterday. We just didn't hit on the two latter underdogs with the Akron Zips and the Liberty Flames, but still, obviously, a positive day. Today, we get Houston and Zaga in this spot, and I like Houston to run away from Gonzaga. I know, again, I've been picking against teams like Zaga and BYU multiple times now, but hear me out. I think Houston's just better than Gonzaga. I just think so. The matchup to watch, obviously, is how does Houston contain Graham Ike? It just is. And I know Ike, again, wasn't the elite guy for Gonzaga when ultimately, yes, we picked against the Bulldogs against Georgia, right? It wasn't the Graham Ike show like it is a lot in the West Coast Conference. Because the difference between West Coast Conference ball and when Gonzaga plays the elite squads, or at least the power teams like a Georgia, is that in the West Coast Conference, Graham Ike is literally the guy. That's why St. Mary's is the team that's able to remain competitive against them, because Mitchell Saxon obviously was the defensive player of the year in the West Coast Conference. By the way, shout out to St. Mary's yesterday beating the SEC zone Vanderbilt. St. Mary's is making that run, I'm just saying. Anyways, but that's why St. Mary's is able to stay competitive against Ike and Gonzaga, because they have a guy like Saxon. That's why Santa Clara was competitive in their game, because they have a big in Christoph Tilley. But the other teams in the West Coast Conference can't compete with Ike in the squad because they're always so concerned with Cleve Battle, with Nolan Hickman, with Ryan Nembhard, hell, Braden Huff as well. And then your big is ISO'd one-on-one, or, he's alone one-on-one down low against Graham Ike, and Ike usually dominates that matchup. But against these elite squads like a Houston, who's a top 4 team in the country, obviously, the 1 seed in the Midwest bracket, they got a guy in Jawan Roberts who is going to have his work cut out for him tonight. Now, Roberts in back-to-back basketball games hasn't played the most minutes, right? The Colorado game, he played 18 minutes. The SIU Edwards games, he only played 20, but he's going to have to be the matchup, I'd assume, against Ike tonight. It has to be Jawan Roberts. Again, though, I don't think Ike is as special in this matchup here against Houston. And now Ike, again, didn't have a monster game against Georgia. Obviously, we talked about that matchup with him and Asa Newell. Ike scored 13 points in that game. But the big, story and the big factor for Zaga in that win was Cleve Battle. Cleve Battle at 24 points in that game, and that's where Zaga is going to get you, right? They had the lead early against Georgia. I think they got up to, 13-0 start. And obviously, I don't think, Georgia definitely didn't lead the entire basketball game. Gonzaga was up by at least 15 points at every single moment of that game. And again, it was the shooting on a cleave battle, right? 9 for 13 from the field in that basketball game, 4 for 7 from beyond the arc. Ryan Nembhard obviously didn't really need to do anything. He's just the facilitator, 8 assists, but Nembhard hit 1 3-pointer, and that's the only points he scored. Nolan Hickman went 5 for 6 from beyond the arc. He scored 18 points. Braden Huff scored 18, and then, Graham Ike's involved with 13 as well. But Houston's a better defensive team by far than Georgia. In all fairness, right, the Bulldogs, we picked them because of, some SEC bias, I'm going to be honest with you. But Houston's an elite team coming up the Big 12. Georgia, in all fairness, was a 20-13 team in the SEC who had shown cracks all year long. And I'll just be honest, that was a bad play on my end that we trusted Georgia to go out here and beat Gonzaga. It just was. I was really trusting in Asa Newell, who scored 20 points, but, he can't do it all by himself. I mean, next leading scorer was Demery with 15, and then other than that, I don't think anyone else touched double digits for Georgia, right? It was just a bad scoring night for the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't think Houston's going to lay an egg like Georgia does. I'm not going to lie. Houston hasn't lost since February 1st, and that was a 1-point loss to Texas Tech. You go beyond that, their last loss is November 30th in overtime to San Diego State. Houston's a good basketball team, and they have scorers too. LJ Cryer obviously is the man on the marquee. He averages 15 points a game. Cryer will have games where he's not completely on like all obviously star players, but Cryer, again, good player, by far the best player for Houston. He's not always going to take over a game because there are so many other guys on this Houston team. Emmanuel Sharp, Juwan Roberts, Milos Uzan. There are other players for Houston that can get it done. I think it's all a matter of the defensive battle in this one. And Zaga shot really well against Georgia. It's something that we hadn't really seen all that much in West Coast play this year. That was kind of the story of how Gonzaga played this year when they lost to Oregon State, when they lost to Santa Clara, when they lost those 2 games to St. Mary's. Hell, even when they beat St. Mary's in the West Coast championship game, it was, all right, this team, again, they just can't hit threes this year. They are very dependent on Graham Ike. And I'm very curious to see what happens in this matchup, obviously, because we'll see how Juwan Roberts and the other bigs fare for Houston. But I've got to assume, again, it's just not the physical, takeover that Ike has against a lot of these Midwest Coast teams. You're not playing an elite team in the country that has good defenders all around. They're going to be able to stop the shooters on the outside if, again, that's the route Gonzaga takes because they saw success in the Georgia game. I think Houston's going to be fine. I do worry a little bit, okay, where does the scoring come from Houston? Obviously, again, it's going to be LJ Cryer. It's going to be Emmanuel Sharp. It was Uzan in the last game against SIU Edwardsville. Obviously, that was a game Houston had in the bag all the way through. They won the game 78-40. But that is the one spot I do worry about Houston some is how do they score and how do they score effectively against Gonzaga. But at the same time, I don't think the Bulldogs have the offensive night that they usually have. I'd take the under on this game. I think Houston wins kind of a grind him out game. And again, that's how Houston's won a lot this year in the Big 12. I think they'll do it here. Give me the Houston Cougars to find a way to beat the Gonzaga Bulldogs in a low-scoring type affair. We go on to our final best bet of the video, and we go to our only underdog moneyline pick of the day. In Lexington, Kentucky, we have got the 7 seed, the UCLA Bruins, taking on the number 2 seed in the Tennessee Volunteers. If you watched the bracket breakdown, you saw this one coming. I'm not impressed with Tennessee. I'm just not. Guys, they let Wofford hang around. Sure, again, they were in control the entire game. I don't even know if Wofford ever had the lead. But they never really put the Terriers away. That game was always in reach for Wofford. They were an 8-0 run away from getting right back into it at all points. And trust me, guys, Wofford I thought was so mid. I didn't think they were deserving of a 15 seed at all. I thought they should have been a 16, and Norfolk State, who covered for us yesterday, should have been a 15 instead. I don't know. Tennessee does not move me at all. They do not. They have players. Chaz Lanier is one of the best players in college basketball. Zakai Ziegler, he can hoop as well, obviously. They've got their other starters, Milicic, Felix Okpara, obviously. But again, it's Ziegler, and obviously Lanier is the guy for the Volunteers. But what I tell you about UCLA, and it's finally getting national recognition now, is the depth. They are one of the only teams in college basketball that do not need to shorten up their rotation going into the postseason. They don't need to do it at all, right? Because they play the same 8 guys all year long. And all 8 of these guys are elite basketball players who have all, one way or another, found their way to UCLA through transfer or whatnot. And all 8 guys are fine. They can interchangeably play these 8. I'm talking about Tyler Bilodeau, Sky Clark, Dylan Andrews, Kobe Johnson, Eric Daly, Adai Mara, Sebastian Mack, Laser Stefanovic. That's the 8-man rotation. All 8 of these guys are very good basketball players. And they have, for the most part, a lot of these guys have led other teams as well in the past in their collegiate career. Adai Mara hasn't, but a lot of these guys have been the guy on their squads before, whether it be at UCLA or elsewhere, obviously, Laser Stefanovic, Utah, and whatnot, right? They're too good and they're too deep to not win games like this, because UCLA will win the bench minutes. They are going to. I think they have a better bench than Tennessee. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. Tennessee really only plays 6, 7-ish guys, but UCLA is able to remain fresh. In spots where, again, Tennessee is going to play their starters the entire game. I mean, Zakai Ziegler had to play 36 minutes. Chesley Neer had to play 35 minutes against Wofford. Right? I mean, Sky Clark was the only guy on the entire UCLA team that cracked over 30 minutes in the Utah State victory. And I get it, again, they beat Utah State 72-47. It was a blowout, but at the same time, give a lot of credit to UCLA for containing that Aggies team. Now, I always thought, again, Utah State was a little bit fraudulent going into this tournament. They really ended the season ice cold, obviously, with Mason Falls, Ian Martinez and company. Hell, Ian Martinez went 0 for 7 from beyond the arc in the UCLA game and 1 for 11 from the field. But UCLA, they are not a bad defensive team, and they've got so many guys who can just hit shots. Clark, Andrews, Johnson, they're all in the starting lineup. They can all shoot. Bilodeau, when he's on, he can, fight down low as well. And I always talk about the presence of the Spaniard, the 7'3" sophomore, and Adai Mara, who's an absolute monster who averages 2.5 blocks a game. I think they're able to beat Tennessee. I think so. Again, Tennessee, for me, is just Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier. Chaz Lanier takes 22 shots in their first game against Wofford. They let the Terriers hang around. If you let UCLA hang around, they are going to bury you. They're just going to. They're going to take the lead in those spots where, again, Tennessee just let Wofford in the game, and Wofford obviously didn't take advantage. UCLA is going to take advantage of that. They're just a deeper basketball team, and I think 1 through 8, they're better than Tennessee is 1 through 7. Sure, the 2 best players on the court, well, the best player on the court is going to be Chaz Lanier. From there, UCLA does have the better players. I don't think one guy is able to beat UCLA. That's ultimately what it comes down to for me. Everyone on the court is a premier scoring threat for UCLA. I don't think I can say the same for Tennessee. I'm taking UCLA to win the basketball game. I'm going to play the points and the money line, but I don't mind both. Plus 5.5 for the UCLA Bruins, and at the same time, the money line is plus 180. Give me UCLA to win and advance to go to the Sweet 16. The first number 2 seed falls as UCLA goes to the Sweet 16 to take on the winner of Illinois and Kentucky. So folks, thank you all for watching our 5 best bets for college basketball here on March 22nd. If you haven't yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. Folks, thank you all for watching, and Mamba forever.